Hi, my name is Mike Tusaw. I'm a financial advisor from St. Charles Wealth Management. Today we're going to discuss time frame selection when buying a call option. One thing that we'd like to mention is that we're not going to cover strike price selection. If you're interested in that, or if you don't feel comfortable with what you need to know about selecting a strike price, we'd like to refer you to our other video on strike price selection. Today, we're going to go over the information that we feel is necessary for you to know in a basic outline when selecting a time frame if you're buying a call option. So the first thing that you want to have an understanding of before you buy a call option and select the time frame for it is what is your time frame on your stock sentiment. So if you believe the stock is going to go higher within 3 months, the first thing that you'll have to ask yourself is, if it doesn't go higher within 3 months, does that mean I'm wrong? Or do you feel it might take 6 months for the stock to go higher? And if it doesn't go up, let's just say it stays the same, at that stage, are you wrong? And if you're wrong, you can manage your risk accordingly by exiting the position or putting yourself in such a position to where it won't harm you that bad and you can manage risk accordingly. The next thing that needs to be considered when selecting a time frame for buying a call option is that you need to factor in the extrinsic value only. So what I mean by that is that if you're buying a deep in the money call option, then you're not going to have to play as much of a factor with time decay because of the fact that the extrinsic value is the only thing that's going to be vulnerable to time decay. So in theory, if you had a 100 delta option, meaning it was at par and totally in the money, then you would not have any worries about time decay at all, even if it was a 1-day option. However, the problem with options like that is that they're generally not very liquid. In fact, they're almost always very illiquid, and you're going to get beaten up pretty badly on the bid-ask spreads. So I personally tend to stay away from those for that reason. And the reason that's the case is because who's going to want to be on the other side of an option if it doesn't have any time decay in it? So that's one of the reasons with which you stay away from it. So when looking through this and making a decision, make sure that what you're factoring in is the extrinsic value and how that's going to be affected when making this decision. Now, the other part of this to keep in mind is that when the option moves, then the stock moves. So in other words, as the stock's moving, the option can shift from being an in-the-money option to an out-of-the-money option if it's going against you, or an out-of-the-money option to an in-the-money option if it's going your way. So make sure that you keep in mind when you're going through this process. As you do this, you're going to have to be very diligent in viewing your option on a day-in, day-out basis, so that way you can make decisions accordingly. If all of a sudden a stock increases quite rapidly and you're still bullish on it, and that option is very deep in the money, it could have started out of the money, but now it's in the money. Now you're not going to have as much extrinsic value to hurt you, and now you have a different trade. Now you have to make an evaluation in another way because of the fact that your strike price selection, so to speak, has changed from the standpoint that it was out of the money, now it's in the money. But now you can reevaluate your time frame because you'll have a lot more intrinsic value than you originally did. And the final things that we need to discuss today in regard to time frame selection are volatility and the exponential component of time decay itself. First off, let's talk about implied volatility. Let's say that we are monitoring the extrinsic value of the option, i.e. the time value, and we see all of a sudden that that value goes higher, even though it's been a week since we've held the option. Well, what's going on with that? Well, that's an example of the implied volatility increasing within that option. In other words, there's more buyers for that call option than there is time decay, if you will. And that's something that's a very real possibility with which you need to be aware of. Now, when looking at that, understand that before events, a lot of times volatility can play a role. Before expiration, perhaps volatility can be higher. There's a laundry list of things that could increase or decrease, for that matter, the implied volatility of the option itself. So just make sure that you're aware of that. The final point that I would like to make is about how time decay can be exponential to an extent. Let's say that we have two options. One option has 100 days until expiration. The other option has 4 days until expiration. Well, between today and tomorrow, the first option, the one with 100 days till expiration, will lose 1% of its time value. The second option, the one that has 4 days until expiration, is going to lose 25% of its time value. Now understand that's in a vacuum where volatility is not a factor, dividends aren't a factor, interest rates aren't a factor, price of the underlying is not a factor. That's just kind of in a vacuum, perfect world, if you will. But the point is that time decay can be exponential from that standpoint. Keep that in mind when making a decision, as time decay can really move a lot faster the closer you get to expiration. So it's for that reason that typically, whenever I'm buying a call option, the extrinsic value portion of it, I like to have it 1 month later than where I'm looking to make the profit on the option. So in other words, if I believe a stock is going to move in the next 3 months, I would probably buy a 4-month call option if I were deciding to go with a single leg call option on it. And that's not a recommendation. That's just kind of a general rule with which I use, because of the fact that if you hold options too close till expiration, the single leg ones, I'm not talking about spreads or other things, which we'll talk about in other videos. I'm talking about single leg options. The time decay can become quite a factor working against you very quickly. So as a quick recap for today, the 3 main points that you want to take away from this are: 1, you want to make sure that you have an understanding of the stock's time frame in your sentiment. 2, you want to make sure that you're only analyzing the extrinsic value section of the call option before you make a decision on what time frame you want to use. And then 3, you want to make sure that you have a good understanding about how time decay can be exponential, but also how volatility can play a factor in that as well. If you enjoyed today's presentation, please subscribe. That's just one way that we can get our material out to more people. Also, if you're looking for a financial advisor who works with options, if it's appropriate for the client, of course, feel free to reach out to me. Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Mike Tusaw, Tosaw. Thank you and have a wonderful day.